All right, diving into Cisco Secure Access today.
Sounds good.
We've got a pretty detailed PDF overview here. And a video, too, from sdntechforum.
Awesome.
A lot to unpack, I think.
Yeah.
This platform's kind of like, I don't know, like the ultimate bodyguard for your network.
It's more than a bodyguard. It's like a whole security detail.
Okay.
What's fascinating about Cisco Secure Access is that it's built on this whole zero trust idea. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I've come across the term.
Okay.
To be honest, it still feels a little bit buzzwordy to me. Like, what does zero trust actually mean in practice?
It's a huge shift from that old castle and moat security mindset.
Okay.
So instead of assuming everything inside the network is safe, zero trust is like trust no one, verify everyone, every user, every device, even if they're already inside the network. They need to prove they're legitimate before they get access to anything.
So even if my laptop is connected to the company Wi-Fi, it still needs to prove it's all, like, healthy and secure before I can open up, say, a sensitive financial document or something.
Precisely.
That seems pretty intense, but also kind of smart.
It is. And it's especially important now, with so many people working remotely.
Right.
Accessing stuff from all over the place.
Yeah.
And Cisco Secure Access helps you get that zero trust model going with a bunch of different components that all work together like a team.
Yeah, the overview mentioned a ton of components. ZTNA, DNS layer security, FWAS.
Right.
It's a bit overwhelming. Feels like there's an acronym for everything.
There are a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
But think of them as different layers of protection, each with a specific job to do.
Okay.
Let's break down a few of the key players.
All right.
First, you have DNS layer security. This acts like your first line of defense by checking every website address you visit against this huge database of known bad sites.
So it's like a super fast security guard checking your ID at the door.
Exactly.
Before even letting you step inside.
It can stop you from accidentally going to a phishing site or downloading malware before you even realize what's happening.
That's pretty handy. Especially since those phishing scams are getting so sophisticated these days, you really have to watch out.
You do.
What's the next layer?
Next up, we have the Secure Web Gateway, or SWG for short.
Okay.
This is where things get interesting. Imagine it as like a really smart filter. It examines all your web traffic, not just the address, but the actual content.
Okay, so it's not just checking your ID, it's like scanning your bags for anything suspicious.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It can detect and block malware hidden in downloads, prevent you from accessing risky websites, and even filter out inappropriate content based on your organization's policies.
That's pretty impressive. It must be using some pretty serious technology to analyze all that traffic in real time.
It does. And it's powered by Cisco Talos, one of the largest threat intelligence organizations in the world.
Wow.
They have this global network of researchers and analysts who are constantly tracking and analyzing threats. So the Secure Web Gateway is always up to date on the latest dangers online.
So it's like having a team of cybersecurity experts working behind the scenes to keep you safe.
You got it.
You mentioned ZTNA earlier. How does that fit into all of this?
Zero Trust Network Access, or ZTNA.
Yeah.
This is the heart of Cisco Secure Access.
Okay.
It flips the traditional security model on its head.
Right.
So instead of giving users broad access to the network and then trying to block the bad guys, ZTNA starts by assuming no one is trustworthy. It hides your applications from the internet, makes them invisible to anyone who isn't explicitly authorized to access them.
So even if a hacker knows the IP address of your server, they can't even see it, let alone attack it?
Exactly.
That's a pretty cool way to stay under the radar.
And when a legitimate user needs to access an application, ZTNA only grants them access to that specific app, nothing else.
Okay.
Like giving them a personalized keycard that only unlocks one door.
Okay, so it's all about limiting access to the bare minimum, which makes sense from a security standpoint. But doesn't that make things more complicated for users? Like, are we all going to have to juggle a million different logins and passwords?
That's where things get clever.
Okay.
Secure Access can actually integrate with your existing identity systems.
Oh, okay.
Like Active Directory or Azure Active Directory.
Right.
So users can use their familiar credentials.
That's a relief.
It can also use certificates, which are like digital ID cards for devices, to streamline the whole authentication process.
So it's not just about making things more secure. It's also about making sure people can actually use the system without pulling their hair out.
Exactly.
The video from sdntechforum highlighted something called Clientless ZTNA.
Oh, yes.
What's that all about?
Clientless ZTNA is a game changer. especially in situations where you need to grant secure access quickly and easily. Imagine you have a contractor who needs to access a specific application for a short time. Traditionally, you'd have to set them up with a VPN client and all that.
Oh, VPNs. Yeah, they can be a real pain to set up and manage.
With clientless ZTNA, you can grant them secure access through a web browser.
Oh, okay.
Without them needing to install any extra software.
So no more messing around with VPN software for every single person who needs temporary access.
Exactly.
That's pretty handy.
It's much faster and easier for everyone involved.
Okay, so it's basically ZTNA on demand. That sounds really useful.
Okay.
But is it as secure as using a client?
So it might not offer the same level of granular control as a dedicated client.
Okay.
But clientless ZTNA still uses those core principles of zero trust.
Right.
It verifies the user's identity, checks their device posture, and only grants access to that specific application they need.
So it's like a lighter version of ZTNA, perfect for those quick and easy access scenarios.
Exactly. And it's a great way to extend secure access to partners, contractors, or even guest users without compromising on security.
That makes sense. The video also mentioned something called remote browser isolation. That sounds kind of sci-fi.
It is a bit like browsing the internet in a virtual bubble. Instead of loading a website directly on your computer, Secure Access actually opens it in a remote, isolated environment in the cloud.
Oh, wow.
All the code and any potential malware that all runs in that bubble, and only a safe visual representation of the website is sent to your device.
So even if I accidentally click on a bad link or visit a compromised website, my computer is totally protected.
Exactly.
That sounds like a really great way to mitigate risk, especially with all the, sneaky threats out there.
It is. It's like wearing a hazmat suit while you're browsing the web.
Okay.
Gives you that extra layer of protection for those situations where you might be visiting unfamiliar or potentially risky websites.
So we've got all these different components working together to secure our network. But how does Secure Access actually decide who gets access to what? Is there, a complex rule book somewhere?
That's where segmentation comes in. It's about dividing your network into smaller, more manageable zones.
Right.
And controlling traffic between them. Think of it like building walls and checkpoints within your network to contain any potential breaches.
So it's kind of like having different security clearance levels within the organization.
Exactly.
Okay.
And microsegmentation takes this even further by applying really granular access controls at the individual application level. So instead of just saying, the marketing team can access the marketing server.
Right.
You can say, John from marketing can only access these 3 specific marketing apps, and only from his work laptop.
Wow, that's really granular. It sounds like it could get pretty complex to manage, though.
It can be, but Secure Access actually provides tools to help you define and enforce these policies in a secure and manageable way.
Okay.
And the benefits are huge. If one part of the network gets compromised, segmentation limits the damage. It's like containing a fire in one room instead of letting it spread through the whole building.
So it's all about minimizing the blast radius, so to speak.
Exactly. It's a really smart way to approach security.
I'm curious to learn more about how segmentation works in practice. But first, maybe we should talk about another crucial part of Secure Access, user provisioning. How do you actually get users onboarded and manage their access?
You got it. User provisioning.
Right. User provisioning.
It's all about creating accounts, assigning permissions, and making sure people have the right access to the right resources.
Exactly.
And Secure Access offers a lot of flexibility here. You can provision users manually, which is pretty straightforward for smaller organizations. You can integrate with Azure Active Directory for a more cloud-based approach. Or you can even connect it to your existing on-premises Active Directory so you don't have to get rid of your whole identity infrastructure.
So whether you're a small business or a large enterprise, Secure Access can adapt to your existing setup. That's pretty impressive. But I'm guessing there are pros and cons to each approach, right?
Absolutely. Each option has its own trade-offs. And it's important to choose the best fit for your organization's size, security needs, and IT infrastructure.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Got it. Manual provisioning gives you a lot of hands-on control, but it can be pretty time-consuming if you have a ton of users.
Right.
Azure AD integration is great for cloud-centric organizations, but might need some adjustments if you're really reliant on those on-premises systems.
Okay.
And integrating with your existing Active Directory, that's usually the smoothest option for big enterprises. But, it might need some careful planning and configuration.
So it's about finding the right balance
Yeah.
between control, ease of use, and integration with your current setup.
Precisely. And those SDN Forum videos you shared, they have some great tips for navigating the whole user provisioning thing in Secure Access. For example, one video highlights some potential pitfalls to avoid during manual provisioning. Did you see that one?
Yes, that was a real eye-opener. They talked about how if you're not super careful when you're uploading user data from a CSV file,
Yeah.
you could accidentally wipe out existing users.
Oh, yeah.
That would be a disaster.
Definitely. Good reminder that even with a powerful tool like Secure Access, you got to follow best practices and double-check your work,
Absolutely.
Those videos are full of those kinds of real-world insights, stuff you won't find in a product manual.
Absolutely. They also cover some of the less common scenarios, like provisioning users from Azure Active Directory. It seems like those videos are like a goldmine of practical info for anyone who's actually, implementing Secure Access.
I couldn't agree more. They're fantastic for getting the most out of the platform. Now, let's switch gears for a sec. Let's talk about another important part of Secure Access.
Okay.
Tunnels.
Tunnels. Sounds a bit like we're digging underground.
Not quite.
Yeah.
In networking, a tunnel, it's like a secure, private pathway between 2 points.
Right.
Think of it as a virtual pipeline, protects your data as it travels over the internet.
So like a dedicated encrypted connection between my home office and the company network.
Exactly. And Secure Access lets you create these secure tunnels to connect your remote offices, branch locations, even individual users to your central network.
That sounds a lot more secure than just using the public internet.
Absolutely. It's like having a private highway instead of using those public roads.
Right.
Your traffic is isolated, protected from prying eyes.
I can see how that would be essential for sensitive data.
Precisely. And Secure Access makes it really easy to set up and manage these tunnels. You can configure them through a centralized cloud portal. You don't have to mess around with complicated hardware or software on each endpoint.
So it's all managed from the cloud. That's pretty convenient.
It is, and it gives you a ton of flexibility. You can create new tunnels really easily, modify existing ones, and monitor their performance all from one place.
You mentioned monitoring performance. Why is that so important for tunnels?
Well, the performance of a tunnel can really impact the user experience, If a tunnel is slow or unreliable, it can lead to application slowdowns, dropped connections, and frustrated users.
Okay, so it's not just about security. It's about making sure people can actually get their work done.
Exactly. And Secure Access, it gives you the tools you need to monitor tunnel performance in real time. You can see things like bandwidth usage, latency, and packet loss, giving you a clear picture of how your tunnels are doing.
So it's like having a dashboard for your tunnels, showing you how healthy they are.
Exactly. And if you spot any issues, you can troubleshoot them before they start to cause problems for users. Actually, those SdntechForum videos you shared, they had some good tips on troubleshooting tunnels.
Oh, yeah. One of the videos walked through how to collect diagnostic logs from the secure client, which could be really helpful for troubleshooting.
It is. Those logs can reveal a lot about what's going on with your tunnels, help you pinpoint the root cause of any problems.
Another video showed how to enable maximum debug logging, which sounded like a really powerful way to get a more detailed look into the tunnel activity.
It is powerful. But fair warning, it can also generate a lot of data. So it's best to use it when you really need to dig deep into an issue.
Right. Use it strategically. So we've got tools to monitor tunnel performance, troubleshoot any problems. But what about redundancy? What happens if a tunnel just goes down?
That's a great question. Redundancy is essential, for making sure you have continuous connectivity. You want to have backup connections in place so that if one tunnel fails, traffic can automatically switch over to another tunnel. No interruption.
So it's like having a spare tire for your network connections.
Exactly. And Secure Access makes it easy to set up those redundant tunnels. You can set up multiple tunnels between your sites and the cloud, and you can configure dynamic failover. So if one tunnel goes down, boom, traffic automatically switches to a backup tunnel.
That sounds crucial for any organization that really relies on a secure, reliable connection.
Absolutely. And actually, the ZTNA video on tunnel creation, it goes into the specifics of configuring redundancy. It's a great resource if you want to understand the different options and best practices.
Okay, so we have redundant tunnels to make sure we're always connected. But what about visibility? How do we get a really clear picture of how the tunnels are performing and identify any potential bottlenecks?
Well, that's where integration with ThousandEyes comes in. Remember we talked about ThousandEyes before when we were discussing web security?
Right. It's that network monitoring tool that gives you a real-time view of network conditions.
You got it. And you can integrate Thousand Eyes with Secure Access to get even more granular insights into your tunnel performance.
So it's like having X-ray vision into our tunnels. We can see how traffic is flowing and spot any areas that might be causing slowdowns.
Precisely. Thousand Eyes gives you those detailed metrics on things like latency, packet loss, and jitter. Gives you a really good understanding of how healthy your tunnels are.
That sounds super powerful. And I'm guessing that sdntechforum video on Thousand Eyes integration shows how to set it up, right?
It does. Step-by-step guide on integrating Thousand Eyes with Secure Access. And it walks you through some of the key insights you can get from the integration. It's definitely worth a look if you're serious about optimizing your tunnel performance.
Wow. We've covered a lot of ground with tunnels. It seems like Secure Access has a really comprehensive set of tools for managing, monitoring, and optimizing tunnel connections.
It does. And as organizations move towards things like hybrid work models and more distributed architectures, these capabilities are becoming more and more important. But tunnels are just one part of the secure access picture.
Okay, so what else should we be thinking about when we're implementing Secure Access?
One key area is web security. Remember all those components we talked about before, like DNS layer security and the secure web gateway?
Right, they're like the first line of defense against web-based threats.
Exactly. They play a huge role in protecting your users and your organization from things like phishing attacks, malware downloads, and other online dangers.
It seems like web security is getting more and more complex all the time. New threats popping up left and right.
It is. But Secure Access, it's designed to stay ahead of those threats. It uses a combo of advanced tech, like DNS layer security, a secure web gateway, SWG, and advanced threat intelligence to keep users safe.
So it's like having a whole team of cybersecurity experts constantly watching the web and updating the defenses.
Exactly. And it's not just about blocking bad websites. Secure Access also lets you set up granular web usage policies.
Policies? What kind of policies are we talking about?
You can create policies to control which websites users can access, what they can download, even what they can do online during work hours.
So you could, for example, block social media during the workday to keep everyone focused.
Precisely. Or you could restrict access to certain types of websites like, gambling or adult content.
Okay, so it's like having a customizable web filter for your whole organization.
You got it. Granular control over your web traffic allows you to really enforce your organization's security and usage policies.
This is all incredibly powerful. But I'm curious, how do you actually manage and configure all of these web security features?
That's where the Secure Access Cloud Portal comes in. It's a centralized management interface for all your security policies and settings. It's like the control center for your entire secure access deployment.
So you don't have to manage each feature separately.
Exactly. The cloud portal gives you that single pane of glass to manage everything. Create and enforce policies, monitor traffic, generate reports, all that.
That sounds incredibly convenient.
It is, and it's designed to be pretty user-friendly, so you don't have to be a security whiz to use it.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
But what happens when things go wrong? How do you troubleshoot any issues with those secure access web security features?
Troubleshooting web security issues can be tough.
Right.
But Secure Access has some great tools to help you figure out what's going on and fix problems.
Oh, like what?
One of the most useful is the Secure Client. We've talked about that before.
Right.
It's got a built-in diagnostics tool that can collect detailed logs about your web traffic, security events, and posture status. Those logs can be super helpful for finding the root cause of a problem.
So it's like a black box recorder for your web traffic. Shows you what happened and why.
Exactly. And the SdntechForum videos, they have some great tips on how to collect and interpret those logs. One video shows you how to enable maximum debug logging, for example, can give you even more detailed insight.
We talked about that before when we were discussing tunnels. Seems like it can be a lifesaver for troubleshooting, but it also creates a lot of data.
You're right. Powerful tool, but yeah, best to use it strategically when you need to really zero in on a specific issue.
Okay, so we've got our diagnostic tools. What about when a user runs into a problem and needs help? How does Secure Access support those end users?
That's a good question. Secure Access is designed to be pretty user-friendly. Ideally, users shouldn't even notice that it's running.
Right.
But of course, sometimes they might need to interact with it directly.
Okay, so what kind of support does Secure Access offer for those situations?
The Secure Client, it has a really straightforward interface for, managing connections, accessing settings, troubleshooting stuff.
Can you give me some examples of what users can actually do with the secure client?
Sure. Users can connect to VPNs, check their connection status, see diagnostics information. They can also manage their posture status, like updating antivirus software or enabling their firewall.
Okay, so they have some control over their own security and connection stuff. Makes sense. What about those sdntechforum videos? Did any of them focus specifically on the user experience?
Yes, actually. One of them gives a step-by-step guide on how to collect a Dart bundle.
Right. We talked about Dart bundles before.
Exactly. And the video makes it easy for users to understand how to gather this information if they have a problem.
Helpful. It gives users the tools to be more self-sufficient when it comes to troubleshooting.
Absolutely. Another video focuses on a specific user experience thing that can be kind of confusing, dealing with certificate warnings.
Certificate warnings. Ugh, those can be so confusing. I never know whether to click proceed or back.
I know, right? They often pop up when you're trying to connect to a website or service that has a security certificate problem, which can be kind of scary.
So what does the sdntechforum video say to do about those warnings?
Well, it explains the different types of certificate warnings, and it tells you when it's safe to proceed and when it's best to, be extra careful.
So it helps users understand the risks and make smart decisions.
You got it. It's all about giving users the info they need to make good choices about security.
This whole deep dive has been really informative. We've covered so much, from the technical details of tunnel management to the user experience.
It's been great exploring all this with you. Secure Access is a really powerful platform, and it's always evolving to keep up with the changing security landscape.
I'm definitely feeling a lot more confident in my understanding of Secure Access now. But before we wrap things up, I have one more question. What are some of the key things organizations should think about when they're actually putting Secure Access into place?
That's a great question. Implementing Secure Access well, it takes careful planning. You need to consider a few things. One important thing is to understand your organization's security needs. What are the most important things you need to protect? What are the biggest security threats you're facing? Once you have a good handle on your security posture, then you can start to tailor Secure Access to meet your specific needs.
Right, so it's not one size fits all.
Exactly. You also need to consider your existing IT infrastructure and how Secure Access is going to work with your current systems. Do you have an on-premises Active Directory? Are you using any cloud-based identity providers? These are all things that will influence your Secure Access deployment.
Okay, so it's important to assess what you already have and plan accordingly. What else?
User training is essential for any security project, and that includes Secure Access. Your users are your first line of defense. So it's really important to teach them about security best practices and how to use Secure Access properly.
Right. It's not enough to just have the technology. You have to make sure people know how to use it.
Precisely. And finally, don't underestimate the importance of monitoring and maintenance. Secure Access, it's not something you set up once and then forget about. You need to regularly review your policies, check your activity logs, and stay informed about the latest security threats.
So it's an ongoing process, not a one-time project.
Exactly. Security is a journey, not a destination. But with the right tools, and if you stay on top of things, you can create a secure and resilient environment for your organization.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Secure Access seems like a really powerful tool for organizations that are serious about cybersecurity.
It is, and it's always evolving, adding new features to keep up with those ever-changing threats.
This has been a really insightful deep dive. We've gone over the main parts of Secure Access, dug into some specific use cases, and even found some hidden gems in those Clientless videos.
It's been great.
We talked about everything, from zero trust to SaaS, from tunnels to web security. What a journey.
It has been, and I hope this has given you a deeper understanding of Secure Access and what it can do.
It definitely has. But before we go, I have one last question. If you had to pick one thing about Secure Access that's the most impressive or impactful, what would it be?
Whew, that's a tough one. There are so many great things about Secure Access.
I know, right?
But if I had to pick just one, I'd say its commitment to those zero trust principles is what really stands out.
Okay.
It's a whole new way of thinking about security, and it's at the core of everything Secure Access does.
That's a really good point. Zero trust really is a game changer, and it's pretty amazing to see how Secure Access is making those principles a reality.
I agree. And with Secure Access constantly evolving and adding new features, it's going to play a big role in the future of network security.
I couldn't agree more. This has been an incredible deep dive into Cisco Secure Access. Hopefully you're leaving with a much better understanding of this platform and all the different ways it can protect your network. And don't forget to check out those SDNTechforum videos for even more tips and tricks.
They're a great resource. Thanks for having me on this deep dive.
And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into the world of tech. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay secure.
Yeah, it really is. Before we started all this, I had no idea how much went into securing a network. It's wild.
It is, and it keeps changing.
Right.
But Secure Access, it gives you the tools, to deal with all that and build a security system that's both strong and flexible.
One thing I thought was really interesting was this Secure Access Service Edge, or SET. I've heard people talking about it, but I'm still not totally clear on what it is.
SaaS, kind of a mouthful, but it's a really important idea in cybersecurity. Basically, it's a new way of thinking about how we handle networking and security. Instead of having all these separate solutions, for networking, firewalls, web security,
right.
SaaS puts it all in the cloud.
So it's like a one-stop shop for all your networking and security needs, and it's all run from the cloud. Exactly. And that's a big deal because it makes things simpler for IT, easier to manage those security rules, and it can even make things run faster for users.
Okay, so SASE is all about bringing everything together and running it in the cloud. Where does Cisco Secure Access fit in?
Secure Access is a core part of how Cisco does SASE. It provides all the security stuff like ZTNA, Secure Web Gateway, Firewall as a Service, all essential for making SASE work.
So it's a key piece of the puzzle.
You got it.
Yeah.
And because it's built for the cloud, Secure Access works really well with other SaaS stuff like SD-WAN. You get a really unified experience for your networking and security.
So SaaS is a big deal, and Secure Access is right there leading the way.
It is, and it's exciting to see how it's changing to meet the needs of organizations today.
This deep dive has been amazing. We've explored the core of Secure Access, looked at how it's used, and even found some cool extra stuff in those ZTNA videos.
Yeah, it's been great.
We talked about everything: Zero Trust, SASE, tunnels, web security. Quite a journey.
It has been. I hope this has given you a better grasp of what Secure Access is and what it can do.
Definitely has. But before we wrap up, one last question for you and for our listeners. If you could give one piece of advice to someone who's just starting out with Cisco Secure Access, what would it be?
That's a good one. I think the most important thing is to be clear about what your organization wants to achieve with security. What are you protecting? What are the biggest risks? Once you know that, then you can start to look at how Secure Access can help you reach those goals.
Makes sense. Matching the tech to your needs.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to play around with the different features in Secure Access. There's lots of info out there, like those SDNTechforum videos you mentioned, to help you along the way.
Totally agree. Those videos are full of practical advice and tips. They really make it easier to understand, especially when you're just learning.
They are a great resource for anyone working with Secure Access.
This has been fantastic. I learned so much about Secure Access, and I'm sure our listeners have too.
Thanks for having me. It was great to share what I know about this awesome platform.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Cisco Secure Access. We hope you found it helpful and interesting. Remember, security is a journey, not a destination. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay secure.